everybody, it's Carol here at OHJ Journals, and I just thought I would share with you the tags that I have made for the July OHJ Journals tag swap. So these tags are all going out to my tag swap partners. Now that they're all done, they will be going out in the post in the morning, but I just thought I'd take you through the process of putting these together. Not quite a tutorial, but I'm sure if you wanted to make one, you could easily follow along. I have actually used the prompts this time round for the July OHJ Journals tag swap. The prompts were, the first one was to use a technique that you've not used before. So I've used my technique on the back. Sorry, I should say a technique that you've not used before or one you haven't used for a long time. So I tried out a new technique. So that was prompt one. The second prompt was to use something in your stash that you had never used before or you've not used for a long time. And if you carry on watching the video, you will see that there are oodles and oodles of things that I haven't used for a long time that I've used on my tags. But the main one is a particular stamp set. And again, if you watch, you'll see which one that is. But as always, I'll put some information in the description box below the video. And finally, the third prompt was to create a hanging tag. And this is my hanging tag on there, as you can see. So I hope you'll stay, grab a cup of tea or cup of coffee and watch me put these together. For the technique I wanted to try, I needed to get out my watercolour paints, which actually hits the second prompt because I don't get these out very often. But what I'm doing here is I'm working wet on some Canson hot press watercolour paper, and I'm just laying down some colours to create a background. And as I say, I'm working wet on wet. Here I'm pulling off a sheet of cling film, and I'm just going to scrunch that up and lay it over the top of the wet paint. It's very important that the paint is still wet, and this certainly was. And I'm just gently easing it so that I can get some crinkles. Now, I didn't pull off a big enough sheet of cling film, so I'm just pulling off another piece here out of my cling film holder, and I'm just putting more cling film at the top, just arranging some nice folds there and making sure that the cling film is in contact with the wet paint. And then I'm just going to set this aside to air dry. Now, it was a really hot day when I was doing this, so I didn't need to leave it outside for very long. So I'm coming in with another sheet of the hot pressed watercolour paper. I've given it a good spray on both sides. If you spray it on both sides with water, it stops it warping. And now I'm going to go in again with the same colours that I used last time. So indigo, Payne's grey, and I think it was burnt sienna. And again, working wet on wet, just laying down some colour, having fun really, trying to build up some depth of colour as well. You really don't have to bother at all about where you put your paints, because the watercolour paint just spreads nicely. But you can see I'm going in with the spray bottle as well, and I'm just giving it a helping hand. I'm loving how those colours are mixing. I was just having fun playing really. I wasn't sure how this would turn out. I'm no watercolour artist by any means, but I was having fun. You can see from the cling film there just how wet that piece of paper is that I've been working on, and again just arranging the cling film on top, and then again coming in with yet another piece of watercolour paper, and I was really getting the hang of it this time round. Lots of water on here. Wanted more blue this time round,
and I was just playing with the water that was on the paper, letting it flow, tapping it off, spraying more water on. Decided I didn't like how it was sitting at the bottom, so I went in with a dry tissue, mopped it up, and now I'm going in with the burnt sienna. Love how these three colours play together. Where the burnt sienna hits the indigo, it was forming a deeper shade of brown for me. What I forgot whilst I was playing with this and having a really good time was just how light it would go once it was dry. So I was being pretty cautious, and actually I could have put a lot more colour on here. Not so keen on that big area of blue to the right hand side. Decided to embrace it and add more blue there. And then I decided no, it was too much. And again, coming in with the cling film. And finally I decided to see how things would look if I tried out the same technique on a time card, but I really had trouble with this. The time card just soaked up every scrap of water that I could put on here, so I was really struggling to get my paints to move at all. I was even spraying them, as you can see there, as soon as I put them onto the time card. Just really didn't want to work. And finally coming in with the cling film again and just arranging it on the top. And like the others, I popped it outside in the warm air to dry.
Can I show you the results now that my papers are dry and I've taken off the cling wrap, or I think it's called cyan wrap in America, and this is what the background looks like now. The other side is still white, but this side has a lovely sort of textured finish to it. So that's one. This one's lighter. I wasn't so patient with this one and lifted the cling film off before the paper was absolutely dry, but I still like the effect that I've got, albeit a lot more subtle. And then this one was my next one. So I'm really pleased with all three of these. So I will probably be going in and using this one for the tags that I want to create for the tag swap. And what I'll do is I will iron all of these backgrounds to get them flat. There's some wrinkling, but as you can see, the backs are white. Now I could go in and use Distress Oxide ink or something like that and make these darker, or take the white off it, or I could even go in and spray with something like antique linen or something like that, but I'm not going to do that. Even though this is watercolour paper, I still think it would be nice to back this, so I'm going to find some coffee stain paper and I'm going to back it and then cut out tag shapes. And just quickly, this is the time card that you saw me do. Now this isn't quite dry, it's still a little bit damp on this side, even though it's a really hot sunny day here in the UK. There is a tiny little bit of the texturing down there, but it didn't work at all really. I was having trouble when I was using the watercolour paint on here because it was absolutely soaking up any water that I put on here. So this was absolutely dripping, almost as if I'd put it in a bath of water. And I was really lucky that I could actually lift it up to take it outside to dry it. So it's not worked on here, but by any means, this isn't a fail. I have a coloured time card now, and I can use that in another project. This side is dry. So I will probably wait for this side to dry, and then when I'm ironing these to flatten them up, I'll flatten this one up as well. And I don't know, maybe use that as our prompt next time to do something that is a trifold tag. We'll see. So as I've said, we'll cover them in coffee or tea stain paper first and glue that on, and then when the glue's dry I will press them to make them flat, and then I will cut them into tag shapes, grungy them up a little bit more, do some stitching on, and then I need to bring in my something that I haven't used for a long time or not at all, and as I've mentioned previously, that's going to be a stamp set. This is what the paper looks like when it is backed with coffee stain paper, and out of the three I've just got this one left. I'll use this for another project. These are a couple of pieces left over from when I chopped up the other two sheets of this. Here are my tags now that they're cut out, and I'll just very quickly go through them. I've got 6 here, and all of these are backed, as you can see, and these are the offcuts from each sheet. Now these pieces I'm going to use as my hanging tags, which is prompt number 3. These basic tags are the first prompts, a technique that you've not used before or one you haven't used for a long time. I'm going to go on now and do the second prompt, and the second prompt was to use something in your stash that you've not used before or for a long time. So I've got some stamp sets in my stash that I haven't used for an awfully long time, and the one I'm going to use, if I lift out my Stampendous folder here, or one of my folders, I'm going to use one of the Tim Holtz collections, etc., and the details will be in the description box below the video if you want the product code. I'm going with this stamp here, so I'm going to lift that one out. I'm also going to use something that I haven't used for a long time, and that's my Tonic stamping tool. I've got some Distress embossing ink, I've got 2 lots of white embossing powder, and the reason for that is this one is a Stampin' Up embossing powder. Now this is fine detail embossing powder, and I absolutely love it. I must have had this in my stash for at least 10 years. It is a little bit more expensive, but a little goes an awful long way. But as you can see, I'm getting to the bottom of this, so I might not have enough to do all my tags. Probably will, but if I don't, my fallback is this one, which is Stamp and Stuff embossing powder by Stampendous, and this one's again a white embossing powder. I'm just going to stamp this image towards the bottom here, and then I'm going to stamp a little bit more at the top. This portion up here is going to be hidden predominantly by my hanging tags, but I still want some detail up there. So I'm going to get on and get all of my tags stamped up, and I'll be back to show you what they look like. Here are the tags all stamped, and I'm really happy with how the embossing looks on all of these. This was the one that you saw me hand stamp, and as you can see it's smudged at the top, so I went in and I used the stamping tool for all the other tags. Now my next job is to go in and stitch all the way around the outside of these, but what I want to do first is to add a little bit of shading. So I'm going to ink the edges of these. For that I'm going to use some Distress Oxide Vintage Photo, which is my go-to really. These are the tags all stitched, and as you can see I've left a tail of threads, and the reason I've done that is because I want these to look semi-distressed. I will go through them all now and I will do a slit at the top. I've got one of these punches, got this off Amazon, and these are great if you don't want to put an eyelet at the top but you want to put some decorative thread or sari silk or something like that at the top. So I'm going to go through just eyeballing with this punch where I want my slit to be, and then I'm going to put some detail at the bottom here. Now I've got here some of these Tim Holtz plaquettes. These are not the mini ones, these are the large ones, because I think the mini ones would be lost. And what I plan to do is, let me just move these out of the way. What I plan to do is put one of these on each of the tags at the bottom, but I don't want to have the brads showing through on the reverse. So what I'm planning to do is put a little bit of this. This is some old bandage from an out-of-date first aid kit. I like it better than cheesecloth, A, because it was free, and B, because it's a wider gauge than cheesecloth. So I've got some of this which I've just dunked into some tea a while ago. So I was thinking I would put a little bit of this behind each of the plaquettes, just a little bit like that. It needs snipping, and then mount it onto a little piece of card. Now these are just some neutral coloured, well not that side but that side, neutral coloured card scraps, lightweight card out of my scrap box that's to one side here, and I'm going to pop that behind the cheesecloth and the plaquette. I'm going to put my brads through so the brads are secured on the back, and then I'm going to glue the whole of this onto my tag. But I'm going to trim this down so that the card isn't noticeable at all, but enough so that it will give me a good anchorage at the bottom of my tag. These are all dry now and nicely glued to my tag or tags, and as you can see no brads on the back. So I just used ordinary Beacon 3-in-1 fabric glue and also art glitter glue to glue these in place, and I'm pretty confident that they are going to hold well. So just to finish these off, I've lifted out again something that I very rarely use. These are the Tim Holtz Ideology Small Talk, and again I'll put all the information in the description box, but as you can see I hardly have used this at all, or this book, and I've had it for years. So I'm going to pick out some quotes out of here, and I've also got here some scraps of fabric. I'm really on a roll today to use up bits and bobs here in the craft room. So I've got some scraps of fabric. Normally what I do with this is stamp on it, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to rip up some small pieces, and I'm going to put these quotes, or one of these quotes, onto the fabric and then glue them onto my main tag. So these are the tags, or the base tags, finished now. I'm just going to leave these to settle and dry. You saw me put a little bit of glue under some of these pieces where I thought the bandage needed to be tethered down a little bit, and I also thinned out one or two. So there we go, that one probably needs thinning out a little bit more. But I want them to look fairly messy and distressed. So there we go, those are going to go off to one side now to dry, and I'm going to bring in these scraps that I earmarked for the hanging tags, and as you can see, I've put on top of them some of these, and again, these are out of my stash. They are Tim Holtz Ideology transparencies, and again, I've had them in my stash for absolutely ages. So I'm going to be using these on my pieces. I'm going to snip away the corner, the bottom of each of these. I think I want to do it on that side, so I'm just going to snip away that and snip away that, and I'm going to stitch all the way round with black Gutman's thread. But before I do that, I'm going to go in with my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo, and same as I did on the main tag, I am just going to touch the edges with a bit of ink, and I'm going to do that on both sides because these are hangy tags, so the tag just might get lifted up, so I want the edges nicely inked all the way around. So there we go. As I say, I'm going to take that to my sewing machine now and stitch all the way around with black thread. I want to attach these transparencies to the front of my hanging tag. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the reverse, not much, just a little bit of art glitter glue just around the edge. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go in with my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch through these onto my hanging tag. So I'm just going to pop that down at the bottom there like that. And these obviously would stand out better if there was a solid colour behind, but I just want a hint of the transparency because I've only got a hint of this on the actual tag itself, and this was the white embossing, so I think it kind of lends itself to doing that. So I'm just going to go round all of these and just put a little bit of glue, and then, as I say, once they're stuck down, I'm going to take them to my sewing machine and stitch all the way round. These are all stitched round now, so I want to put some eyelets at the top corners. So I've got some eyelets here, and all I'm going to be doing now is punching an eyelet in the top corner, top left and top right hand corner. So I'm just going to go away and do that. Okay, so that's all of those done now. I think I will concentrate on this bit next. I have got here some cameos. Now, I haven't got enough of these in black, and they're not all the same, but I thought they would be nice to use. I've also got some Tim Holtz kilt pins here, so I'm going to be pulling out a few of those to use, and I've got my fabric again here, and I'm just going to be ripping up portions of this to use on here. I'm just gauging roughly a piece of fabric that I can put through my pin, so it's going to be roughly about 2 centimeters, I think. Make some snips on here. I'm just going to do one for the minute so that I can make sure that that is actually the size that, or the width that I need. Probably could have gone a little bit wider. I'm going to take my kilt pin, thread my fabric through it, fold it in half like that. I'm going to pop it on my piece so that it just covers the top of the stitching and I have a little bit of detail going along there. And I'm taking some art glitter glue. I'm just going to glue it onto the back here, and if you've got Fabri-Tac glue or Beacon 3-in-1 glue, you can use that. I know that the art glitter glue works quite nicely. I'm just going to open it up, make sure that back piece is nicely glued. I'm going to put some more glue in here, and I'm just going to fold that piece up like that so that my safety pin is nicely trapped inside there like that. So I'm going to use this cameo and pop that on there. I'm going to put a generous amount of this art glitter glue on the back here. Let me just turn her over again. I'm just going to position her in the middle of that piece of fabric like that. And I've got some electrical wire pegs here, or rather some pegs for working with electrical stuff. And I'm just going to put some pressure on that whilst it dries. So that's what I'm doing with all of these. So I'm just going to carry on. I thought I'd do something slightly different with this cameo because it's round and all the others are oval. I don't think it's sitting quite well using the kllt pin. So what I'm going to do is pop that away, and I've lifted out one of these little scraps here. Now this is a square scrap of fabric. Sorry about that, one of the cats was going out through the cat flap. And I thought that that little square scrap of fabric would look better on this particular cameo, or for this particular cameo. So I'm going to put some glue behind it, and I just want it slightly overlapping the acetate card, and then pop some more glue on the back of the cameo like I've done with all the others. And again, pretty generous amount of glue. I'm going to pop that in the middle like that. And same as with all the others, I'm just going to anchor it down with one of these. In fact, I think I might get a bigger one for this one. So I've got a big bulldog clip here, which I can use on this one. And I'm just going to put a bit of fabric over the top just to protect it, because this is quite a strong bulldog clip, and I'm just going to close that too. And like all the others here, I'm just going to leave them to sit and dry for 1 second whilst I tidy up, ready to do my final bit. These little hanging tags are dry now, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some eyelets on my main tag to dangle them from. And I have already marked out on my tags where I want my eyelets to go. And to do that, all I did was take my little tag, decide where I wanted it to hang, and then just moved it up slightly and put a little mark immediately opposite the eyelets on the actual hanging tag itself. And I'm hoping that will give me a reasonable hang. I'm just going to go through all the tags now doing this. The eyelets are done on the main tag. Now I was going to use ball chains for these, but it all looked very heavy. So I've decided to use this. Now this is faux leather, but I think it will do the trick. And what I thought, rather than take it from the back through the back of the hanging tag and across there, I thought I would just make a loop from each of the eyelets. So if I do something like this, I think, so taking it back through the same eyelet like that, and I thought having it hanging like that would be better than having a strip going across the front. So that's what I'm going to do, and I've got 2 strips of this, and that's all I've got. So I'm really hoping that I've got enough to be able to do all the tags. I should do, but if not, I'll have to resort to a plan B for whichever ones I haven't got enough of this thread or this thong to use. So that needs to go through there like that, and this needs to go back through this eyelet up here like that. Now that's how I want them to be, and whilst I'm tying my knot at the back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this so that it doesn't move and I know that I've got enough thread and the tension is right. So I'm just going to position my tag where I want it to hang, like that. Put a clip on it and hold it. And the same on this side. I'm going to just flip this over and tie a knot on the back. And all I'm doing is trying to center up my knot, and I'm trying to tie a little reef knot, so left over right and right over left, except I'm not doing very well at the moment, so let me just twiddle that round the other way. That's it, like that. Just going to put my finger on that and try and close up my knot. And I will put a dab of art glitter glue on the back of this knot just to hold it in place. And there we go. I could put something through the top here, and I still might do, and I could hang some charms from here, and I still might. I don't know yet, so we'll see. But for the time being, I'll get on and I'll carry on tying these hanging tags in place. So here I've got some little tiny pieces of paper that I'm making into miniature envelopes, and I'm going to use these as some charms to dangle on my cards or my tags. As you can see, I've got one here that was in my stash, so I decided this was the only one I'd got, so I decided I'd make a couple more. And this is one of the little tiny tassels that there's a tutorial on in my playlist. I haven't got enough of those to put one on all of the tags, but I put one on this one, and I'm just making some more of these little mini envelopes because the colour's right, and I think they'll be fine on there as a little simple charm. So I'm going to make a few more of those. All I've done here is I've got a piece of scrap vintage handwritten text, and I've chosen text that's very small. I've cut it to 4 centimetres in height, and in width it's 2 centimetres. So I've folded it up at the bottom by 1.5 centimetres, and then I've folded the top over. With that top flap, I've marked a point, which is the centre of the envelope, if you will, and then drawn a line from that point up to the corner on either side. And now all I'm going to do is take my scissors and just snip that away, and that creates the flap on the envelope, like that. And then just put a dab of glue inside and close this all up. And then just leave that to dry, and then when it's dry, put a tiny little eyelet in it, like I've done on this one. Now these are 4mm eyelets that I've used up here, so you can see how small that one is. That's probably a 3mm, I would say. As you can see on this one, put a jump ring through it. With these, I'm going to do exactly the same, but I'm just going to ink round the edges, and that's what it looks like on the back. And actually thinking about it, I should have really inked the edge of the envelope flap before I closed it down, because that actually would give a bit more definition on it. So I'll probably do that on the other ones. So I'm going to carry on and make a few more of these. So I finished my little envelopes, but I have to say I'm a bit disappointed how they've turned out. I like how they look on the front, but every one of these has split at the back. I hope you can see that, rather than giving a nice finish like that. So I think I must have just got a bad batch of these, because these are a new or a recent purchase, and as I say, every single one of them has done that, and that's not something I've had before. The fronts look fine, so I've actually used them on my tags, and all my tags are now finished. So I will do some photographs at the end for you, everybody, so that you can have a look and see in more detail what they look like. But I do hope you enjoyed seeing them come together, and I hope my tag partners enjoy receiving these through the post. So until the next video everybody, take care, look after yourselves and happy crafting. Bye bye now.